On 29th March 1461, the Battle of Towton was fought near Towton in Yorkshire, where Yorkist and Lancastrian armies met in one of the decisive struggles of the Wars of the Roses.
England changed kings again and again, yet the victors kept digging graves for their own house, with every crown they seized in blood and triumph. How did the war between Lancaster and York end? By handing England's throne to a man who had stood almost outside both camps all along, unseen. In theory, England's crown should have stayed with the strongest Plantagenet lines, not fallen to an exiled Tudor with a thinner claim at all. By the mid-15th century, after defeat in France and drained finances, England had no strength left to endure another weak, faltering crown. The real battlefield was not only St. Albans, Towton, or Bosworth, but the power corridor linking London, the Midlands, and the north of England. Whoever held the Midland roads, northern strongholds, and the approaches to London could drive the war's tempo far faster than any rival nearby. Lancaster held the lawful crown under Henry VI, while York held stronger blood, harder nobles, and ambition, fierce enough to overturn the realm. One side was dragged down by the frail Henry VI. The other surged under Richard of York, then under the swift, relentless Edward IV in war anew. Lancaster assumed the crown on Henry VI's head would by itself keep the loyalty of nobles who were already restless, armed, and divided still. But that regime was cracked within, because Henry VI was too weak to punish revolt, discipline rivals, or lock down factions around him in rule. In 1455, First St. Albans proved that court rivalry had hardened into organized violence inside England's ruling elite and noble core in England. Instead of smothering the fire, short truces only gave the nobles time to rearm, recalculate, and choose their side with greater clarity in war. Richard of York no longer wanted influence alone. He began aiming directly at the line of succession and the crown beyond it in England itself. That move turned court faction into a life-and-death struggle between rival royal bloodlines, each now fighting for survival and throne in war. When York was killed at Wakefield in 1460, his cause did not collapse, but surged into the hands of his fiercer son, Edward of March, in open war. The war split wide open when Edward marched not only to avenge his father, but to set the crown upon his own head by force and steel in England. The North, the Midlands, and the roads to London tightened into a killing corridor where each defeat cost men, money, prestige, and legitimacy. Lancaster moved too slowly to pin him down, while Edward struck so fast that enemies reacted only after the balance had already shifted in war. York saw Henry VI's weakness clearly and forced the war into a contest of will that Lancaster's court could no longer endure or survive intact. Towton in 1461 crashed through a snowstorm in a colossal collision. That victory lifted Edward IV onto a throne built on English corpses. But once York held the crown, pressure did not fade. It spread into reward, noble management, and control of all who helped him win the crown. Lancaster was not dead, and inside York's own camp, Warwick the Kingmaker bristled when Edward IV stopped behaving like a pawn to him in England. Warwick's betrayal locked Edward from the rear and joined old losers to fresh allies who now felt insulted, slighted, and driven aside by power. In 1470, Edward fled England, and in one sharp reversal, the crown swung back again to the broken yet restored Henry VI on the throne once more. But that restoration exposed the same old fracture. Lancaster regained its king, yet not a machine strong enough to hold England together at all. When Edward returned in 1470, Barnet and Tewkesbury shattered the enemy, killed York, and erased Lancaster's main hope forever in war. Bodies carpeted the fields, banners collapsed in wind and rain, and Edward IV entered London again as the only man still able to rule there then. After Edward died, Richard III seized the crown from his own house and turned a dynastic struggle into a crisis of belief and trust in England. Bosworth in 1485 ended with Richard III dead on the field, while Henry Tudor married Elizabeth of York to bind the Roses as one realm at last.
This union ends the strife.
The Wars of
For
the
peace
Roses
and
ended
England's
not
future.
when one house fully won, but when both had bled England long enough for Tudor rule to enter at last for good.
The battle ended in a Yorkist victory, with Lancastrian resistance broken on the field and heavy losses suffered in the fighting. Its outcome secured Edward's position